Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome to another episode of Inside Arsenal. I hope wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world, you're having a very, very good start to the weekend. Got quite a bit to talk about today. We're going to talk about Reiss Nelson and his contract situation. I'm getting lots of questions about exactly what is going on with Reiss. We're going to look at Pablo Mari, whose brief time at Arsenal, shall we say, has come officially to an end now. Look at some very interesting quotes, I think, from Nicolas Pepe ahead of his return to the Arsenal squad next week for pre-season, and we'll go through, of course, a lot of your questions and comments as well. So let's get started, shall we? And let's talk about Reiss Nelson, because I've been getting a lot of questions about Reiss, about what's going on. Officially, it was the last day of his contract yesterday. So Reiss Nelson right now is a free agent. He's out of contract. June the 30th, 2023. That was when his previous Arsenal contract came to an end. So technically, he's on the market as a free agent. But, and this is what I've been asked awful lot about. If you see here, I said it yesterday, Arsenal are very, very confident still that Reiss Nelson will sign a new deal. A 4-year deal has been agreed with Reiss, and it is just waiting to be signed. And Arsenal are very, very confident that that contract will be signed. There's been a lot of interest in Reiss Nelson over the past few months. He's been talking to a lot of clubs, which is, well within his right. It was out of contract. He was well within his right to find out exactly what was out there. AC Milan, I know, were pushing very, very hard to sign Reiss. Other clubs as well, from England and from abroad. And he took his time. Weighing up his options. He talked to Mikel Arteta. He talked to Edu. He wanted to know what the sort of plans were for him next season and going forward. Would he get minutes, of course? And he took his time. He weighed up the options, spoke to the other clubs, and he's decided that he believes he wants to stay at Arsenal and he can make a success of things at Arsenal. So a 4-year deal has been agreed and it's just waiting to be signed. And I believe that will be signed once he gets back from holiday, which he's on at the moment, that deal will go through. Of course, before it is signed, anything can happen. But as far as I understand it, at the moment, Arsenal are very, very confident that he will be committing his future to the club, and a new 4-year deal will soon be made official for Reiss. And I think it's deserved. A lot of people were saying, a lot of contacted me and said, we've got to be ruthless here. We've got to show, this is a good time to move Reiss on. But I don't really agree with that, I have to say. I think he warrants a new contract. I thought his performances last season were very, very good. Whenever he came on, I thought he impressed. He took the game by the scruff of the neck. He showed he wanted to play on the front foot. It was the best we've seen of Reiss Nelson since basically broke through as a 17-year-old and looked so exciting. And then he lost his way a bit, injuries. I think he's admitted sort of off the pitch. He wasn't acting in the most professional way for a while, but he's got his head screwed on. And I thought last season he showed real signs. And you've got to remember, Reiss is still a very, very young player. It feels like he's been around for ages. Well, he has been around for ages, but he's still very young. He's still got so much potential. He was the guy coming through at the academy that everyone looked at and thought he was guaranteed to be the next breakthrough star. And it looked when he came on as a 17-year-old that was going to happen. I remember being in Sydney on the pre-season tour when he played right wing back under Arsene Wenger, and he was absolutely amazing. He had 80,000 people on their feet in the stadium in Sydney. Every time he got the ball, he was so excited. And he thought, wow, this is an absolute superstar. And it just hasn't quite lived up to that reputation. He's been able to, he's struggled a fair few things. I think hasn't helped that Bukayo Saka has come through and basically usurped him. Saka's ended up being the player that most people thought Reiss Nelson was going to be. And that probably hasn't helped Reiss. But last season, every time he came on, he was on the front foot. I thought he took initiative. And I think he really, really impressed Mikel Arteta last season. And that's why Arteta and Edu were very, very keen for him to stay. And I think it makes sense. I really do. I don't really buy into the fact that Arsenal needed to be ruthless with Reiss and move him on this season. I think even if it doesn't quite work out and he doesn't get the minutes, Arsenal can still sell Reiss Nelson for a lot of good money in about a year's time or 2 years' time, I think. Letting him go on a free, losing him on a free after all the sort of money you've invested into his development, the years you've put into his development, I think it would be a real shame to lose him on a free. So personally, for me, I think it's a good move. I think he warrants a new deal. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do if he can get the minutes. Ultimately, it's going to be down to him. He's going to have to impress. He's going to have to train well. When he does get opportunities on the pitch, he's going to have to take them. And if he does that, then I think he'll get opportunities. We saw it in the second half of last season. Mikel Arteta used him a lot, and that was because he was playing well. And I think, there's no reason why that won't happen again next season. So, once this does get confirmed, obviously because there is still a chance, but as far as I'm aware, it's looking very, very likely it's going to happen. It will be confirmed very soon. I think it's a good move for all parties, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Reiss can do next season. All right, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Of course, are you a big fan of Reiss Nelson? Are you happy that he's staying? Or do you think, like I said, who have contacted me, that Arsenal should have been a bit more ruthless and just let him go this summer? Let me know, as always, in the comments below. Okay, let's quickly talk about this man, shall we? If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see who I'm talking about. If you can't, you're very unlucky, because that is one good-looking man who is up on my screen at the moment, Pablo Mari. He has left Arsenal officially now on a permanent basis. Of course, he was on loan with Monza last season in Serie A. As part of that loan agreement, there was an obligation for Monza to buy if they avoided relegation, which they did. And so that move now has been made permanent. Arsenal announcing that last night, officially putting out that little statement on the website that ends with, "We thank Pablo for his contribution to the club and wish him well and his family the best of health and happiness in their new chapter." He only made 22 appearances, Pablo, after signing in 2020. He signed in that, I think it was Mikel's first transfer window, wasn't it? When there was basically no money. It was in the middle of COVID. And Arsenal couldn't do anything. I think they signed Pablo Mari and Cedric Suarez in that transfer window. So not exactly the most exciting of transfer windows. But he came in, he did a job. Pablo, he wasn't exactly a superstar by any means. I thought he started pretty well, and then he faded. I remember that game against Lukaku at the opening day of the season against Chelsea. Actually, wasn't it? It was the first home game of the season, wasn't it, against Chelsea, when Chelsea won 2-0 and Lukaku made his debut after signing. He absolutely dominated Pablo Mari, gave him a torrid time, and Mari never recovered from that. But decent player, really good guy as well, really popular behind the scenes. Pablo Mari, excellent talker as well. He's always good to talk to in the mix zone. So yeah, good luck to Pablo Mari. But I think that's one that suits all parties. Arsenal getting about £6 million for Mari, or €6 million, I think it is, for Mari. Now that's been made permanent, and I think he'll be the first of a number of players to move on this summer. And when you kind of look at the players, you look at, I don't know, Jurrien Timber, Folarin Balogun, those sort of players who are all really hotly tipped to move on. I look at this Arsenal squad at the moment, and I don't think there's anyone really earmarked for certain to leave. I just think there's a lot of players who could leave if decent bids come in for them. I think that's how Arsenal are approaching the sort of market in terms of outgoings this summer. There's a couple that make sense for leaving, like we talked about Kieran. We know that about the fact that he doesn't really fit into the system. He wants to play, so it makes sense. If a good offer comes in from Jurrien Timber, he will go. But I think there's other members of the squad as well who is very similar story. Ideally, they would stay, and Mikel Arteta will use them, and he has big plans for them next season. But if a good offer comes in from them, then the club will probably consider it. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's a couple of outgoings this summer that we would sort of raise our eyebrows at and think, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And Thomas Partey we've talked about as a potential player who could be one of those who goes out, which maybe at the end of last season you wouldn't have expected it. But I've already had my say on Thomas Partey, haven't I? Don't want to go over that again, but I don't think he should be one who really is leaving. One player who might be in that group of players who could leave this summer is that man. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll know who I'm talking about. Of course, Nicolas Pepe, Arsenal's, for now, club record signing at £72 million. He's given an interesting interview to L'Equipe, I think it was, or one of the French publications, speaking about his future, about his relationship with Mikel Arteta ahead of his return for pre-season, because he will be coming back for pre-season training when it gets underway, of course, because he hasn't gone anywhere yet, entering the final year of his contract at Arsenal. And he's been speaking, and this is what he had to say about his future. He said, "I will return to Arsenal. I was loaned without an option to buy, so I have to go back. I don't know yet about my future. When I go back, I'll speak with the coach and everyone, and we'll see what everyone's ideas are, and then we'll make a decision." Now, could Nicolas Pepe get a chance at Arsenal next season? Lots of people have asked me that. I don't think so. I'd be surprised, but I mean, you never know. If they can't find a buyer, then maybe you do look to use Nicolas Pepe. He could be cover for Bukayo Saka. I doubt it, but who knows? It wouldn't be the maddest of things to do. We know he's a good player and he's done well. I don't think Nicolas Pepe, obviously, everyone's going to label him a flop for his time at Arsenal because of how much he cost, and it was impossible for him to shake that price tag off. But for the first couple of seasons, he played pretty well. He was very influential in that FA Cup win in his first season. The second season, he finished it very strongly, scored a lot of goals, and then he lost his place in the team. And it was clear that Mikel Arteta was moving in a different direction. And he speaks about that a little bit. The sort of when he basically lost his place in the side, he said, I was a substitute. I was going mad. How could I be a substitute when Arteta, said he counted on me? Everything was spinning in your head. I was a substitute for what felt like 10 matches. It was a time when they signed Willian. He is a number 10 or a winger, but he played on the wing for like 11 or 12 matches in a row. My head turned knowing that I'd spoken to the coach and it wasn't like that. He's talking about the times when he really struggled. Then he was out at the side, and then he was asked about, do you have a bad relationship with Mikel Arteta? You're kind of viewed as a player who he didn't get on with and he didn't really trust. And he said, no, that's not true at all. He helped me in every way on a tactical level in terms of game intelligence, because his philosophy requires a lot of intelligence. He knew my style of play wasn't waiting in possession. It was cutting inside. It was waiting on the right. Before I was a bit freer. I had to wait in my zone, and I wasn't like that before. These are parts of my game that he tried to improve. He always wanted to help me with that. So interesting comments there, I thought, from Pepe on certainly his future, but more that relationship with Mikel Arteta. And, from what he says there, he got on very well with Arteta and he appreciates a lot of the work that he did with him behind the scenes. Personally, I still think it would be unlikely that Nicolas Pepe is a player that Mikel Arteta turns to next season and uses, but you never know. Like he says, his future is far from decided yet. He'll come back in pre-season, he'll sit down, he'll talk with everyone. I mean, talks like that would have already been going on with his agents, but he will come back and sit down, talk to everyone, and then a decision will be made when it comes to him. Okay, let's move on now to some of your questions, shall we? Thank you, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, for sending these in and leaving them in the comments. Let's get going. Here's the first one from Fireproof AJ. He says, hi, Charles. When are the team coming back from holidays for basic training? It would usually be around now, right? But I guess because of the season and international delays. No, they are coming back right about now, next week. I'm not sure the exact day they return. I think it might be midweek sometime, but I'm sure Arsenal will put that out and we'll find out soon enough. But the non-internationals are due back next week, because the following week they go to Germany and they play their first pre-season game the following week on the Friday, I think. The game against Nuremberg, so that's less than 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away now. I think so. Yeah, they're back at some point next week. That will be for the testing. They'll be, going through all the science and all the physios and the sports science teams will be measuring how much fat they've put on over the summer and all that sort of stuff. And they'll be doing all the testing, and then they'll get out and do a little bit of ball work, I imagine, the week that they go to Germany. But yeah, they'll be back next week. So that'll be interesting to see what sort of content Arsenal put out on their channels in terms of pictures and videos and who turns up. But of course, the players who have been involved internationally this summer, they won't be heading back. They'll be getting an extended break. You look at, Kai Havertz, for example, he's off on holiday. Bukayo Saka, Ramsdale, all those sort of players, they'll be off enjoying themselves on holiday. It'll be the non-internationals who will come back at some point next week. Okay, here's a question from Robert. It says, question for your show. Do you see Timber replacing Saliba as a right centre-back, or will he move more likely to be played at right back and invert into midfield? Thank you for your question, Robert. I see him coming in as right back. From my understanding, that is why he is being signed. It's obviously he's a versatile player. He can play at right centre-back if needs be, but I believe he's being signed as a right back. If the deal gets done, which we think it will do. Of course, I reported that on yesterday's video. But yeah, I believe he's coming in as right back. So I think he'll be the competition, cover, whatever you want to call it, for Ben White. Mikel Arteta will use him there. He'll certainly be playing in a sort of more inverted right back role, perhaps, than we see Ben White playing, who likes to get on the overlap, of course. Does that very, very well with Bukayo Saka. But yeah, he could fill in for William Saliba, but he's certainly not going to be replacing Saliba. He'll be coming in as a right back option. Okay, what's this one? What's your name? My YouTube Beat. Sorry, I'm not sure what that name is. It says, Charles Partey seems to be reliant on playing regularly to keep his form. He seems to take time to get up to speed when he returns to the squad. True or false? True, 100%. I think it definitely takes Thomas Partey a bit of time to get up to speed. And And when he does have an injury and he does miss some football, when he comes back, you can see he's missed a fair bit of football and he's just not at 100%. He's one of those players that needs to get into a rhythm to be at his very best. And I think that's why he was so strong for the first 2/3 of last season, because he did get into a rhythm. He played a lot of football. The injuries that we'd seen before didn't really happen, and he looked really good because of that. And then as soon as he picked up a little bit of an injury, he went away with Ghana. He didn't play the second game. He came back not 100% fit, and then he really, really struggled because he lost that rhythm. He wasn't 100% fit, and he really struggled in that end of season running. So yeah, I think it's absolutely true what you say there. Who we got here? Assis says, "Hi Charles, what happened to the Saliba contract? What's the delay in announcing it?" I get a lot of questions about this actually. There's nothing to worry about as far as I understand. It's all done, agreed. It's just with the lawyers at that stage at the moment. Saliba's away. He'll come back. It'll all be sorted out. All the pictures, everything, the media will all be done. And yeah, I'm absolutely convinced that William Saliba that contract will be announced. I don't think it's anything to worry about. It was agreed. Even when it was agreed, it was always said that it was going to be a few weeks before it was officially, signed and sorted. But as far as I'm aware, my understanding of it is that no one's panicking, no one's worried. It's with the lawyers. It's all the final sort of legal things are being sorted out, and then he's going to come back from his holiday for pre-season. It'll all get signed. The media will be done, and we'll all be able to celebrate William Saliba signing a new contract. So nothing to worry about as far as I understand when it comes to William Saliba. Okay, this is an interesting one, I thought, from Isaiah. Says, "Hi, Charles. You know that West Ham has given the go-ahead for Reiss to talk to Arsenal. It was also reported that the personal terms were agreed between Arsenal and Reiss weeks ago. Can you tell us a little bit about what the formalities are? What does it mean that we can now talk to Reiss? Have we not been doing that to agree personal terms and pitch a project?" Yeah, I think the whole being given permission to talk to Reiss, it's a little bit different. At this stage, this is just basically you being given permission to finalise the transfer, finalise all the last sort of things with Reiss. The talks have been going on for a long, long time, not specifically with Reiss when it comes to the actual deal and the personal terms. That's all been happening behind the scenes with the agent for a long time. There have been conversations with Declan Rice and Arsenal, which doesn't normally happen. You're not normally allowed to do that, but I think it's been a little bit different this time because West Ham and Declan Rice have had an understanding, they've had an agreement that he was going to go at the end of this season. So he's basically been given a little bit of freedom to sort out his future ahead of the summer. So he was able to kind of, talk to the interested parties, get the sort of lie of the land on what they were like and what they were offering and what the managers were like and how they envisaged him playing. So it's been a little bit different to the usual transfers with Declan Rice because of that agreement he had with West Ham that he would be able to leave at the end of the season. So the formalities at the moment, that's all between the clubs. That's not really to do with the club and Rice. That's all basically sorted. As soon as the clubs agree the structure, the payment of the deal, which has been agreed in terms of the fee, but what hasn't been agreed is the structure of the deal and how much is going to be paid when. They're still squabbling a little bit over that. Squabbling, I don't know if that's the right word, but they're still discussing that exact structure of it all. Obviously, West Ham would like it paid sooner rather than later in bigger chunks. Arsenal would like to spread the cost over a few years because that's obviously going to help with their accounting and everything else. So that's what they're trying to get sorted at the moment. And I'm sure it will get done. I'm not worried at this stage by any means that it's not going to get done and the talk's going to suddenly collapse because the fee has been agreed and both clubs are working towards getting it done. But the player obviously wants to join. Both clubs know that. So it works out for everyone that this deal can be wrapped up, and I'm sure it will be very, very soon. But yeah, the formalities are more between the clubs. But when personal terms and all that sort of stuff is already and pitching a project, that's been done a long, long time ago. It doesn't normally happen, certainly in terms of speaking face to face with a player, because you're not allowed. Technically, that's banned until the clubs have agreed a fee. But it's just been a little bit different this time around because of that agreement Declan Rice has had with West Ham. Thank you very much for your question, Isaiah, and thank you very much, everyone, for your questions on today's show. Appreciate them as always. Do have a very good weekend wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. And we'll be back tomorrow to speak all things Arsenal once again. Have a great weekend, everyone.